Hi, I'm Megan. This is my garden and this channel is Greenwood Grown. Welcome back to my garden. It's been a long time since I've made a video, but I think it's about time again. So some of you may know that this channel, this whole YouTube project was started so that I could show my grandfather, my grandpa Bill, my garden. That was the whole reason I started making videos. It evolved into something a little bit more than that. But last November when my grandpa died, so did my desire to make videos. There's a new garden, and the garden has brought things back to life. And we'll see. Today is a beautiful overcast northwest day, and I feel like making a video, so I am. I don't know if that means that I'll go back to making a video every week or what that means. But today it means that I think we should have a garden tour. And the garden is looking in that really fun phase right before it bursts into production. So come with me and let's tour my garden. Let's start off in the patio garden where I am sitting, where there are, as always, new pots. I just can't help myself. Every year I add a few new containers. So these three containers that look like this are all new. They have dahlias in them. And I'm very excited. They came from Swan Island dahlias. And none of my ones from Swan Island, they have come into bloom yet. They were started in my greenhouse, but only my established dahlias are in bloom. So this little tomato cherry red girl right here, she was my first to come into bloom. Get your tail out of here. And then over here I have one in bloom, but they're getting close. They're kind of small still. All of these are big, full-size dahlias. So other things in the flower bed. Hold on, let me get rid of my dogs. So some of the other things, we're growing a lot of new flowers. Their status is in here. I was able to get cosmos to germinate for the first time. And then these straw flowers, which is what was planted here last year, were volunteers that we moved around. And I was delighted to have some of them come back because I had forgotten to plant seeds for them. So I still get straw flowers in my garden. We also, a new flower this year is this tanacetum. I've got that in a few places in my garden as well. And this, which I believe is called cupia, it hasn't come into bloom yet, but it's an interesting color and an interesting shape, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. Over here, there's nothing particularly new. Coreopsis is doing great. The yellow one has come into bloom and the purple one's not quite yet. And the original dahlia that started the dahlia obsession is looking beautiful as always. Over in the rock garden, I also have a few new flowers. This is larkspur. There's a few of them in here. That's the only one you can see in bloom right here, but and the rest of the pots over here we have mostly perennials or semi-perennials. Not the petunias, which oddly are in full bloom, but just don't have any. They got fertilized yesterday. They'll come back into full bloom here in a few days. And over here I have a new plant. It's called a wall germander, I believe. It's this lovely thing right here. And I'm looking forward to see what it does as it gets older. Move over into the herb garden. I did lose a lavender. Actually I lost two lavenders. This one I didn't quite lose, but it's quite small. I planted some cat mint right there. Hopefully that will take over. And everything else is looking happy and healthy. When I moved around to where the other lavender that I lost was, this one was fully dead, and it had such a hard time in this space that I planted a rue there. I'm hopeful that it'll be happy there. We'll see. The coneflowers, echinacea, just came into bloom. They're so much fun. This herb garden is now in its 3rd year, this portion, and it's filled out and looking lovely. Over here I have a couple of new one new dahlia and one old dahlia. So this was one of my ones from last year. She just bloomed. And then some of the new flowers. Really enjoying the million bells, and I will be growing more of those. I'm going to start some from seed this year, I believe. And then status for cut flowers. And moving into what I call the zinnia bed, but it has way more than zinnias in it. We do have zinnias. They are just coming into bloom. The liatris here and here is about ready to come into bloom. And last year my gladiolas had already bloomed by now, and they don't even seem to have any like of the spikes. If anyone knows, am I doing something wrong? Maybe they needed to be divided this year and I didn't divide them. I don't know. If you are more experienced at growing gladiolas, please let me know. Maybe it's just the weather, but my honeysuckle fell down in a storm last year, and so I cut it to the ground, and you wouldn't know it, would you? It isn't quite as bushy and full as it was last year, and it does need to be pruned again. But I cut it down basically to the ground, and it has grown all of that in 1 year. The calla lilies are up, and let me show you one of my new favorite flowers. These forget-me-nots are, I think, being crowded, which is why they're so tall, but they're getting harvested today for an arrangement. This little thing is called Love in a Mist, or Nigella, and this is my first year growing it, and I am in love. I am just delighted. The Sweet William, which is always, it's one of my favorites, but as you can see, it has bloomed. It is a long blooming flower, but its first flush is over, and I'm in process of deadheading it. And then it will have its second flush after I give it a little boost. Cosmos, all of these grown from seed. Like I said, I bought some heating mats and was able to grow them from seed, so I'm very excited about that. And some more tanacetum down here, which is in bloom but is quite small. I expect them to all get bigger like this, but there's one there and one there and one there. And then one more spot before I move into the vegetable garden, I decided to go with snapdragons this year in this container. I normally do coleus and impatiens, but this year I did impatiens in the front down here and snapdragons in the back, and I love them. I don't know how long they bloom, so we'll see if they die off later in the summer. I may have to rethink that decision, but for right now, I am delighted, particularly by this sweet thing. Oh, that color. I just love it. This is my asparagus patch. It is my 3rd year, so I got to harvest asparagus for the first time this spring, and I ate as much asparagus as my heart desired. I'm the only one in my family who really cares for it, so I ate it until I couldn't eat anymore, and then I let it go to fern like I have every other year, and I really just love the look of asparagus after this. So this is a great success for me, both because I get to eat asparagus in the spring and because I have this lovely patch of ferns. I use them a lot in flower arrangements for greenery. We sheet mulched our mini orchard made up of 3 trees, which are, as you can see, like laden with fruit. I even did thinning and they still look like this. But we sheet mulched the bottom here, and now there are plants that were newly planted this spring. There's yarrow and asters. There is like all sorts of things. So just the plants that you see around here. Looks like that one isn't doing so well. That's a pestamon, I think. Oh no, maybe that's a pestamon. I don't know what that is. There's a lot of them. We put drip irrigation in to water them, and all but that one looked to be doing quite well. My brace for that branch fell down, but that's what's going on there. Anyway, everything here is doing quite well, and I'm looking forward to next spring when everything really jumps to life in this new garden bed under the trees. Over here, the El Campagna or fairy wort just came into bloom. So beautiful. We had a few. This is our horseradish right here, this dead looking thing. We had an irrigation problem, and right during some heat, and everything else did well except for the one thing that is irrigated in a pot that I forgot to hand water because I never have to hand water it. This one wasn't planted at the time. This is Tulsi. Over here in the in-ground beds, we have onions, and peppers moved over here this year. And these two beds are, we're just storing things on top of them. The two, they were where our garlic was, and we just harvested it. So there have been some really big changes to our property this year, and this probably constitutes the biggest one. This was a cottonwood grove with blackberries growing in it when we moved here. We have worked on removing it for years. Many of the cottonwood trees died and we took them out. The city made a big difference. The city owns the property behind us. It is a nature reserve. And this spring they decided to dig a water retention pond right behind our property. So it isn't planted out yet. I'm hopeful that it won't remain this eyesore. This was a treed area and they took out all of the trees, the cottonwoods and the others. And as you can see, we still have these few cottonwoods that are stumps that are putting up suckers. Well, not suckers, but like growth off of them that we will have to take care of. But all of the rest of this, all the blackberry crowns, there's still obviously a few coming up. And the city side is a mess, which we maintained for years and will probably cut down again this summer. And but we've been told that it will be planted out in October so that it will become established over the winter, and we're hopeful about that. The frustrating blueberry patch is producing berries. We are having an irrigation problem, and I'm working on getting the other well up and running because I just think that this water line has too much stress on it. It's not drying well enough. And then one of the other changes was this was where our compost bin was. And it was getting to be more like a giant compost disaster. We did move it over to we've moved all of the utilitarian portions of our yard except for the red shed that's behind this green shed. This green shed doesn't belong to us. It belongs to our renter. My plans for this space are a flower bed with a nursery bed. So I have the bed, and it will go where there's still some sticks and things right here, and it will go in there. And then where the straw is where the compost bin was, and there's a lot of really beautiful soil there. So I covered it so that the soil, until I'm ready to use it, that the soil doesn't get ruined. All right, moving to the front of the garden. We grew a short variety of sweet pea in these plants, or in these pots this spring. And that was really great because the dogs couldn't get to the peas, and we got peas. Then I pulled them out and put the basil in. So the basil isn't as established as it normally would be, but it's filling in and looking great. And we also got peas. So we may do that again. The reason that we don't get peas when we plant them in the ground is because my dogs love them. They will eat the entire plant. And we did plant some in the ground, and they did eat most of them. I'm not sure what to do about it. I honestly just think it's silly and funny that my dogs love peas so much that they eat the plants. But I'm here. I had a marigold volunteer. There's 3 of them in here. One of them was a volunteer, and I put the other 2 in there. But I so rarely have marigolds volunteer, and consider how many of them I grow. I always think that's interesting. But I've got another tanacetum here and some of the volunteer straw flowers that we moved. We are growing scarlet runner beans up the trellis again. There's one right there growing up. They just take some time. And then I'm waiting to see this little plant right here. And then there's another one right there and one growing in the path right there. I think is black-eyed Susan vine, which I grew here last year, but I didn't know that it reseeded. So we'll see. I'm letting it grow to see if that's what it really is. It looks like it. We'll see. I put nasturtium in here in the spring. I have some volunteer zinnias from last year. And then I have put a few more straw flower, and there's another tanacetum at the end. And here's the other basil bed. Okay, I'll move through the arch. Ike's helping himself to the grass. If only that actually helped with the weeding. We have cardboard down because the grass actually was getting a little bit out of control in the paths, and I am not ready to, I just haven't put down bark chips. This front path was so bad this year that Ike, can you move, buddy? Thanks, bud. That we dug it out, used the compost from the bark chips that had composted over the last couple of years, put it into this bed, and which was quite low, and then put down new bark chips. So we have cherry tomatoes in this bed as always, along with the big African marigolds. They aren't giant yet, but they'll get there. The nasturtium are looking beautiful. I got my first cherry tomato yesterday, maybe 2 days ago. I got both. Oh, there's some right here. Sun Gold, one of my favorite varieties of cherry tomato, and then a new variety that I am trying called Blush. I don't see one on this. It's this plant right here. I don't see one on there. Lots of flowers though. The Blush is new to me. It came from Territorial Seeds, and it is delicious. It is going to rival Sun Gold as my favorite, I am sure. In the next bed, we did a chaos garden, which is where we plant our greens in the spring, and they have just bolted in the heat this week. So there's still a little bit in there, and there's some kale mixed in, so the kale can stay. But we'll make some decisions about what stays and what goes. That's a volunteer sunflower. Unless they're in the paths, or if they're even right near the paths, I'll let them stay, or right near the edges of the paths, but usually let my volunteer sunflowers stay. And she is beautiful. Over here we've got basil, peppers, the hot peppers. The sweet peppers are over in the in-ground bed. And the Walla Walla onions, which are enormous. I have been harvesting them for use, but they just continue to grow and get bigger. And we're gonna have an amazing Walla Walla onion year this year. These 4 boxes on the end with zinnias in them, are seeds that I saved from my zinnias, and we marked their colors, and they are not throwing true to color, which isn't that surprising, but it is the first time I've saved my own zinnia seeds, and my germination rate was not great, but for zinnias that doesn't matter because you can move them so easily. I just sowed them strongly, deeply, whatever, thickly. And then in the greenhouse, we separated out the ones that did germinate. Some of them are growing true to color and some of them are not, but they are seeming growing true to size. So that's exciting. I don't know if have the patience or the interest to stabilize seeds, but I like every color of zinnia, so that's fine. That's fine. Over here we have last year's chard, which we enjoyed this spring again, but it is bolting. It'll probably get fed to the chickens here in a little bit. Last year we did, I don't know what we grew up here last year. I can't remember. This year we're doing Armenian cucumbers on this side, so I've got 3 Armenian cucumber plants. Right now this is empty, but it's probably going to get cabbage from over there moved into it. Bunching onions, which we just enjoy. These are a perennial in my garden, and we enjoy them all spring and even in the winter. On this trellis we have a new variety of squash. Last year we did Romanesco, and it was the first time I'd ever had squash bugs in my garden. And I later learned that Romanesco squash is known for that. So this year I'm trying Trombosino squash, and I've got 4 plants, 1, 2, 3, 4 growing up. I didn't expect the 4th one to germinate, so I thought I was going to get 3, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see if they outcompete each other. Behind here we have celery. We did get German chamomile and a sunflower. These 2 were in the path, and I moved them in there. Surprisingly, the sunflower lived. It was a little bit big to move, and it did live. It died, and then it came back. And then purple cabbage, which is grown really close together because I had way more starts than I wanted, so I just thought that I would grow smaller heads and see how that worked. Miracle the artichoke. Did have a pup removed from her. I probably should have done more than one. She's quite large this year. We've ate quite a few artichokes, and now I'm letting the rest of them go to flower. So in a week or 2, these will be burst into one of my favorite flowers in the garden. This in-ground bed has summer squash, eggplant, and more onions. We had so many onions. I have 2 varieties, Peterson and Highkeeper, for storage onions this year, and they germinated so well that I have them all over the garden. In here, patty pan and zucchini. If they look small, that's because we had a germination problem. They had to be replanted. So they are small, but we still have plenty of time to harvest them as they get bigger. Right here, my teenager that works for me really likes green beans. If you've been hanging around, you know that green beans are not my favorite vegetable. I don't mind them. I would rather eat almost any other green thing. But she really likes fresh green beans. In fact, she likes to eat them raw, which I really don't like to eat them raw. One of the only vegetables I don't dislike it. I just would choose other things if given the option. But she really likes them, so we did sunflowers against the trellis, and then she did a row of beans on either side of the sunflowers so that they can both grow the trellis and the sunflowers. They're doing great. Those are, I believe, Blue Lake pole beans, and I don't know what the sunflowers are. We had a whole bunch of sunflower seeds. We did choose a tall variety. The beans might be restricting their growth a little bit, but they actually seem to be doing quite well because the ones behind them are all volunteers. So they're significantly older. Those were planted earlier. In this in-ground bed, we have 2 rounds of potatoes. This one looks terrible. This area right here looks terrible. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but it is full of weeds and then what looks like dead plants, because these were the March potatoes planted on St. Patrick's Day, and they are about ready to harvest. So I've never had to manage sunflowers in with my potatoes before. I might have to sacrifice those plants, but I might let them flower first before I harvest. We'll see. Not complaining about the number of sunflower volunteers I got. There's a lot of them. They are delightful. In this bed over here, we have the more storage onions, Pattersons. These were planted, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago. Kale and beets. And then on the outside we have an experiment. I almost always grow indeterminate tomatoes, so I can grow them up poles. But this year I ran out of canned tomatoes, and I was frustrated by just waiting for my heirloom tomatoes to have enough to can a batch. So I did decide to grow 4 determinate plants. So they're these 4 tomato plants right here. If you are unfamiliar with a determinate versus an indeterminate plant, a determinate tomato produces most of its fruit all in one, like 2 to 3 week period, and they're desirable for canning. So we're gonna try Gill's All-Purpose, and this one is called Stewpice, and they're both determinate varieties. We'll see how we like them. I also have cucumbers growing near the edges so that they can spill out. You can see where my curious dogs, I side dressed them, and my dogs can't get the fertilizer because it's been soaked in water and it's just in the soil, but they do try. And then this is the tomato bed. Let me move somewhere where you can see. Right here are the full-size tomatoes. I am growing 4 varieties this year. These are all indeterminate, which means they will grow to the top of these poles and higher, and that they produce fruit throughout the season instead of all mostly in one go. The varieties this year are pineapple, always. That's my favorite variety of tomato, so I will always have those in my garden. Brandywine, but it's a new to me, what do they call that? Like, they're all brandywines, but different people have different types of brandywines. This one is territorials. I've never grown it before. We also have a couple of new ones. I was feeling adventurous, so I have Cosmonaut, which I have never grown before, Italian Heirloom, which I have not grown before, and Momotaro. So I chose some of Territorial's new varieties. Well, they aren't new to them necessarily, but new to me, from their catalog, so that you know, just see if there's some new tomatoes that I haven't grown before that I will end up really liking. We'll see. All right, that's my July garden tour. We'll see how it goes from here. I'm hopeful that as the garden starts to help me move through my grief over losing my grandpa, that I'll find joy in doing this again, and I'll talk to you next time.